Good evening, everyone. It is 7 p.m., as Bernie says, and time to call this meeting to order. Councilmember Roberts, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
You have to unmute.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Shannon. Bernie, could you do roll call, please?
Smith? Everyone might want to unmute right now. Smith is here. Cheney?
Here.
Carter?
Here.
Anderson?
Here.
Roberts?
Here.
Hogan?
Here.
And Burton.
Here.
Thank you, Bernie. Now it's time for public comments. Please state your name and address for the record. You have up to 3 minutes to share your comments. And Bernie, I'll hand it back over to you.
All right, I'm going to get my timer open here. Okay. So we have, is it Ira? Am I pronouncing that correctly?
That's correct.
All right, go ahead.
Thank you and good evening. My name is Ira Blumberg and I live at 137 North 45th Circle in Camas. I'd like to start out by thanking the council and saying that my family and I are extremely excited by the Legacy Lands project and the prospect of having parkland and hiking trails around all or almost all of Lacamas Lake. I think that'll be just a great thing for our town. But I have a related concern. It appears that this year we've had algae blooms and toxic conditions in Lacamas Lake earlier and far longer than in previous years. I don't know if this is a trend yet, but I am concerned that if we do not take care of our lake, we'll have a wonderful hiking trail around a toxic lake that no one can use. I would very much encourage the council to look into everything we can do to improve the condition of the lake, including working on making sure that the biofilters are in full operating condition in all of the areas within the city limits, and working with the county and the state to reduce or prevent runoff both from farms and other industrial uses, as well as from lawns and other home uses. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ira.
Okay. Next is Randall. Hi, Randall.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
Randall Friedman, 1187 Northwest 10th Avenue in Camas. Mayor McDonald, Council, it is a sad day when conversation about our core future is relegated to one-way efforts of written questions lacking serious answers. Relegated to a loudspeaker, I feel like I'm in a dystopian sci-fi story. You said we have to do a North Shore plan to know the look and feel of buildings and materials. The look and feel of downtown doesn't seem to matter. You said plan North Shore because the owners may sell the property and there is no detailed plan. Georgia Pacific's owners sitting in Atlanta could decide tomorrow to sell all or part of the 27-acre lab site. The only city rule or guideline is heavy industry. Any number of downtown owners could also sell and there is no plan. That doesn't matter. You say do a North Shore plan because the families have been there a century. The mill was before Camas as a city. It has been a good, giving neighbor central to our history, yet it doesn't deserve a plan. You ridiculed efforts saying the alternative to a North Shore plan is to hope the owners lock current uses into a time capsule. Aside from dismissive, you do have a point. There is a time capsule in Camas. This city's treatment of downtown. Our comprehensive plan considers our lovely downtown locked in a time capsule. In this capsule, the mill will still be the functioning heart of downtown in 2035. Quaint brick buildings will remain in their current form. There's no need for a plan. How absurd and sad. Beyond our questions your video didn't answer. How much spent to date on the North Shore? What is the budget? I'm told the city lacks the ability to track the project cost. There is no budget. You chose to not answer these questions. A city watched a neighborhood pool get torn down and replaced with a $78 million bond measure. The North Shore is well on its way as an encore. The people of Camas spoke last November. They do not want the status quo to continue. They want to be listened to and taken seriously. You got off to a good start, but the strong current has pulled you back. It is time to recapture what was started. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Randall.
Okay, Marie?
Marie Tabata Calrami, 5724 Northwest Elray Drive. I would like to talk about the Lackamas Shore's biofilter testing and enforcing compliance. So you might know that the city's first test of the biofilter water running into the lake was December of last year. It showed that the biofilter water was indeed super high in phosphorus. By super high, I mean above the trigger limit set by the permit that was supposed to trigger action to fix the problem. It was also 3 times higher than in December of '91 and 7 times higher than the last December testing, which was done in '92 when the biofilter was in its prime. The city also tested water from the maintained bioswale next to our unmaintained biofilter. That point could be considered a control point, and it was below all trigger limits. My question to the mayor and city council is this. While that was the first of 4 tests, isn't one bad test result well over the trigger limit enough to trigger action? My second comment is a point of information. Last year, Steve Bang and I came to the city council requesting an enforcement letter to require our HOA to comply with the federal and state standards for the biofilter. What I did not know at the time was that the city of Camas sends out these types of letters routinely every year. The city is required to inspect all 100 plus privately owned biofilters in Camas and sends letters requiring the HOAs to fix any problems noted in the report. The inspection report form even has a place to circle for removing, quote, trees in pond or swale. Those letters come with a 2-page flyer called Stormwater Facility Maintenance Tips that details exactly what we're asking for. Under routine maintenance for vegetated stormwater ponds, the first bullet says, mow grass. The second bullet directs HOAs to, quote, manually remove unplanned tree seedlings. The trees in our biofilter all grew from unplanned seedlings. The second page, the flyer discusses that extensive maintenance and repair problems may be avoided by keeping up with routine and specialized maintenance, noting that otherwise a contractor and possibly engineer could be required. We are in the otherwise category. The flyer lists examples of under the heading extensive maintenance and repair.
You have about 30 seconds, Marie.
Thanks. The first bullet point, quote, removing established trees from the pond/swale bottom or side slopes. The second bullet includes regrading the facility. Those 2 points are all we're asking for, and it is required of all other HOAs, none of which are discharging directly into Lackamas Lake. I hope that the mayor and new city administrator will take time to meet with us and help us get compliant. I'll go ahead and email you guys the 2-page flyer that they send out. Again, thank you for your time and thank you for your service to our community.
Thank you, Marie.
Okay, is it Geraldine?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm off of Ogden Court. First of all, I want to thank the city
Could you
council.
provide your last name, please?
Oh, yes, Holland.
Thank you.
First of all, I want to thank the city council, the mayor, and the chief of police for your dedicated service to our community. I recognize you get to be the place people's anger falls and have put yourself in this position to serve and want you to know I appreciate you. Also, I sent my council members and Mayor McDonald emails and also appreciate your responses. The mayor and the chief of police are also attending our Camas School District's Equity Forum, and I look forward to the conversation and appreciate your attendance. But I also want to say I'm ready for meaningful action. If I can't persuade you, I urge you to watch President Obama's Zoom call, where he calls on mayors and city council leaders to take the pledge for police reforms. We are all a part of this problem, which means we can also be a part of the solution. He put together a bipartisan task force in 2015 that generated a report on data-driven, research-based police reforms that work. 8 Can't Wait are reforms that can be implemented immediately, and Campaign Zero goes further. It's my understanding we already embrace a number of the 8 Can't Wait reforms, so this should be a first doable step to make actual policy. I call on you to take the pledge to send a powerful signal that we are committed to action and digging deeper towards meaningful change. I'm also calling for the police use of force policy to be made public for transparency and for there to be civilian oversight during this process for accountability. We have a wonderful community in Camas, but I refuse to believe we are the exception or that our work is done. Racism is a deeply rooted and systemic problem. I encourage you to watch the documentary 13th. It does a great job explaining our history and the connection between the 13th Amendment, mass incarceration, and the convict lease system that exists today. Also, I want to get rid of this idea of good or bad cops. We are all capable of making poor decisions when we are scared or stressed. Also, I want to address this notion of defunding the police. I know many people get alarmed by the idea, but I encourage you to learn about Camden, New Jersey, where they completely reformed their entire system and reduced crime by half over 7 years. Also, I want you to know who Rayshard Brooks, a father who was killed by police in Atlanta, Georgia on Friday, whom I know would be still living today if the system would have sent a social worker instead of an armed police officer to the scene.
You have about 30 seconds.
Our Camas Police Department is beloved by the community, but my Black and brown friends still have to have the talk about police. The moment requires all of us to challenge ourselves to be transparent and held accountable to pave a path for a safer future for all of us. I shouldn't have to convince you of that. If you've been paying attention, I hope you already understand this moment requires something from you. And I leave you with a quote by Martin Luther King Jr. "A riot is the language of the unheard. Are you going to listen?" And lastly, George Floyd's 6-year-old daughter, Gianna, says, "Daddy changed the world. Let's please do our part and make that be true." Thank you.
Thank you for those thoughts and comments, Geraldine, and I'll touch a little bit more on that when I get to mine later on in the meeting.
Okay, Tara?
Hey, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Great. This is Tara Pitchford, the political director for Camas for Cannabis Access. Checking in again with you guys today. Just wanted to give you a quick update that we are still working on getting back into full gear and getting our initiative petition out into the community and signed, and we have planned an official relaunch for later this week and into this weekend, so you can expect to hear hopefully some buzz around town about that. Wanted to just check in, make sure that everybody knows that we're still here and we're still working on this effort, and again offer our contact information up for anybody who has any questions or is contacted by anybody in the community that might have any questions. We can be reached at info@camasforcannabis.com, and really appreciate your consideration of our initiative and your support.
Thank you, Tara.
Okay, and now we have Kim or Adam.
"7021 Northwest Freiburg Strunk Street. I turned in 2 packets to all you councilmen and mayor regarding B Street and Payne Street in North Wire Creek. Apartments coming to that street, Payne Street and B Street, and there's a number of companies. Scott Parnell's Boat Builders, 3 buildings going in on B Street, and Matt Olson's 100+ motorhome garages going in on B Street, and the storage units on Freiburg Strunk Street is on B Street starting. All this stuff, and there's no street. And Payne Street has been widened halfway up to the 46 homes right next to it. They're all under construction. The other 20 feet, 600 feet of Payne Street up to Lake Road is only 20 feet wide. And my boulevard along there is, I mow 40 feet wide by 600 feet. I mow every week so that the pedestrians can walk on it with their children and their dogs, and all the neighbors that are moving in there are using my property to walk on, and the street's now wide enough to walk on, with all the construction trucks and cars and vehicles plus the golf course is all using Payne Street. There's 40, 50 people a day walk across my boulevard, and if I don't mow it, it'll be 3-4 feet long, and they wouldn't be able to walk through that. And I've been doing that for 20 years now. And Payne Street was on the 6-year road plans for 2018 with $2 million worth of funding, and the funding has gone away, and now it's pushed back on the 6-year road plan to 2026. And so is B Street. B Street, Matt Olson's buildings on there, they go through his parking lot to get through to the back there for the 100 motorhome garages. It's got, Parnell has 2 buildings, and he's building his 3rd building on the north side of B Street.
You have about 30 seconds, Adam.
And I just want to listen in to see if you guys got all the documents that I sent in. The second batch I sent in to Curly Carruthers, and I guess he's going to comment on the 6-year road plans. So I just want to listen in on what the decision, or what kind of changes we're going to have for Payne Street to be widened. Taxpayers should pay for the street when all these homes and apartments and retail, everyone that's moving in there is asking, where's the retail? And my property.
Thank you, Kim, and we will be talking about that later on today as well in the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, now we have Phil.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Good evening, Phil Williams, 936 Northeast 41st, Camas. So I'd like to start by celebrating comments made by my neighbors here. Off the top of my head, Ira, Randall, Marie, Geraldine, and just recently Adam there. I agree with a lot of those points, and thank you, Adam, for doing that work for 20 years. That seems like something that needs some attention. You know, passionate, reasonable people like this come before this council week after week, and they deserve action. So in the past, I've been urged by this council and this mayor to say more positive things about this council and this mayor. My response to that has usually been that our time to speak here publicly is limited, and that timing is limited by this council's choice. So because I need to be brief, the most efficient use of my voice as a citizen becomes mentioning what I feel is the most relevant and urgent matter that I can elevate during those 3 minutes. Unfortunately, more often than not, in the course of the last couple years, I've seen more bad than good come out of this body. And that's where my focus is needed to be, and I stand by all my past comments. Of course, this week is not a normal week in Camas or in our country. This week, I need to use my time almost exclusively in praise of an action taken by Mayor Barry McDonald recently. The mayor's video released about the 8 Can't Wait campaign, where he also shares his own experience immigrating to this country as a boy, was an important use of his office, in my opinion. And I'd like to plainly thank him for using his platform to send that message. In my experience, people in power can shy away from controversy in public discourse regardless of how they feel privately. It's a sad reality that many lack the courage. But I applaud the mayor for removing the line between his private and public thoughts in this time, when we need every leader in every governing body to get serious about using their influence to make our community stronger and safer for everyone. The mayor's video was a strong opening statement, and there was follow-up action promised by way of a conversation between the mayor and Police Chief Lackey. I think that conversation should be held publicly and in front of an audience of citizens without rehearsal or script. I hope part of that conversation is about how Camas hasn't, at least based on demographics, really experienced the pain and the fear of many marching in the streets of towns like Portland and Seattle as we speak. I hope that conversation mentions how, regardless of our individual experiences, Camas has an opportunity here. Like any small American town where change can happen quickly with the will to support it, we can introduce actual policy that makes us a leader for our neighbors by example. Let's be that example on the future of safer policing with a more restrictive use of force policy, including an outright ban to things like chokeholds or strangleholds if not in place, and a renewed focus on de-escalation. So, Mr. Mayor, thank you again from my family for your public comment on this issue. We hope it's only the start and that strong words are followed closely with strong policy that you urge the City Council to approve without delay. To the City Council, I welcome you each to take a moment following my comments to individually express your support for the mayor's position here and now on the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil Williams.
Okay, I see no other hands raised. We did receive a public comment via email. It arrived today at 12:27 p.m. by Masha Eshke, and it was about the Brady Road traffic safety improvements. That was distributed to the City Council and will be included in the minutes. And again, if you send an email to public comments at cityofcamas.us, we will, up to an hour after the meeting, those will also be included in the meeting minutes. And that's all we have for public comment right now, Mayor.
Thank you, Bernie. So the consent agenda, what would the council do for the consent agenda? So it looks like Shannon, it has been moved, or is anyone seconding that?
Second.
All right, it has been moved by Councilmember Roberts and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. We will go to council comments. We'll start with Councilmember Burton.
Okay. 2 comments tonight. Thank you, Mayor McDonald. First, I'd like to urge our city staff to take seriously the condition of our trio of lakes, Round Lake, Lacamas Lake, and Fallen Leaf Lakes. We all know what a great asset they are to the community, and we want to keep them that way. In addition, we know that this process is going to take dozens and dozens of years to actually clean up the lakes to a consistent, sustainable level. So I urge the city to make the necessary contacts and conversations, and I know those have already been started with the state, county, and federal agencies, so we can initiate this process and make sure that we retain our crown jewels of Camas. That's the first one. That's a little more local. The second one is I do want to recognize the social situation in our country right now. It's definitely democracy in action, to not be trite, because it is. People in our town are out giving their voices and supporting their causes. The rallies have been well organized, well attended, and significant, no matter which way the cause that may be supported. It's really time for us to reassess ourselves personally, to reassess the structural racism in our institutions, our policies and procedures, because they do exist. Whether or not we personally may believe we experience them, they do exist for our community members, both here and afar. So those are my 2 things. One, on the lake, let's get that action moving. And then second, let's take a stand and start working together to address the inequities in our own community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Burton. Councilmember Hogan.
I will reverse the order on that and say the the social situation is foremost on my mind. And I'm glad to see the video that you put out, Mayor, and the conversation we had today on the phone, and the plans for the meeting on the, I believe it's the 29th of June, to discuss the issues, among other issues that we discussed in a public forum. So thank you for leading that effort and putting it together. And the second thing is the lake. The lake is fed in by lots of various areas, but I realize the staff has done a lot of work to try to get the county and the Department of Ecology and the Department of Health more involved. But I think we need to put the pressure on as a council to elevate this so that we get more action and we get some support financially from the county, the state, and perhaps the federal government. This is one of the best lakes in Clark County, and I think we as a city need to demand that we get more help, because there's a lot of area that's draining into this lake that is impacting the quality of that water. And those are the two things I wanted to talk about. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Hogan. Councilmember Cheney. You're on mute, Don.
Now I'm unmuted. Thank you, Mayor. I wish I wasn't brain dead, I guess. I don't know. I should have known that. Anyway, I want to start by thanking the Mayor for his message. That was well done, and it showed heart and head connection. I appreciate that. It inspires me to comment that the first thing, one of the first orders of business when it's appropriate, and we can do that by process, is engage the conversation amongst council so the public can hear it, and then engage the public in the context of issues and how seriously our community takes these concerns and what we should look for and path forward. So I join my peers in making that comment. And again, thank you, Barry. That was well said, and I appreciated it. My second issue is I agree with everything that's said on the lake. The lake has been called the diamond of our community, yet it's kind of green, and it needs attention. I remember years ago when I was in high school, I used to water ski on Camas Lake, and didn't even give a thought, even though it was probably dirty with the affluent from the cattle and dairy industries above there. I don't ever remember it being regulated with the algae problems that we're having now. So I think we need to use some energy and focus on helping that get resolved. And finally, report to the council. Last week I talked about CRESA issue before the board of CRESA last week, considering revising the budget and reducing the rates. And there was a rate reduction approved at the last CRESA meeting. I think Kathy would tell us that it's about $21,000, and we can opt to use that this year, next year. So in the context of COVID and the economic impacts of COVID, I think even though that doesn't seem like a lot, it is a lot to CRESA, and I appreciate their willingness, the board and my peers' willingness to step forward and make that commitment. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. Wanted to echo first points that councilors have been making regarding the social system and the public discussions that need to happen. I think we can begin those at the June 29th session, but then hopefully when COVID releases us to having more conversations with the community and interactions with the community would be the next steps. I don't think I know enough, and I'm not hearing enough. I need to know more, and both working with our own employees as well as the community as a whole. The lake has been long talked about. Unfortunately, it's not been listening to us talk about it. It just continues to do what lakes do, and they don't get better by themselves. So I agree with comments on that as well. And that's all for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Councilmember Carter.
It's hard to go last, and Melissa, I feel badly for you and Shannon. I agree with the comments that are already stated. First, the lake, if we get to the point where we can use the funding that we put into the budget in December to do some of our own testing on Round Lake to see if we can make a difference in this on the city-owned lake, that we can take and work with the county and the state on the larger lakes to get their partnership. I encourage us to do that. I also encourage everyone to read books, listen to your colored friends' stories, watch the shows that are available on many streaming services right now. The school district, if you have kids in the school district, know that the school district has been running an equity forum for the last, this is the end of the 3rd year. They have another meeting on Thursday night. And it forces us to look inside and find the truth within us. So I do encourage everyone to do that, further research on themselves. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Councilmember Roberts.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of things here. We are not Atlanta or Minneapolis. We're Camas, Washington. I'm not in favor of defunding the police. If you defund the police, that leaves a void. There's no accountability. And where there's no accountability, no matter how good your intentions are, it doesn't end well. I applaud citizens' right to protest. And I was so happy to see that there were many, many citizens out protesting in Camas. I took a spin through Safeway parking lot though, and I noticed that many of the cars were from out of state. So I have to wonder how many citizens actually protested that were from Camas. Is there a greater agenda going on here? Mayor, and also I applaud you for being so transparent about your life, your childhood, and your parents. I really appreciate that. And yes, it does lend itself to Americans having a better understanding how to treat each other well. And I mean all Americans, everybody living in America. We need to learn how to treat each other well. And I guess that's really all I have for right now. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember Roberts. Councilmember Smith.
Nothing tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I just have 3 things. One is on the, reference in Geraldine's comment earlier, all the public or all the police records are public records. So any of that information, you can just email the police department and then get that to you. The second or the first thing other than that is the pledge calling on mayors to commit to the following actions. So there's 4 actions that the pledge asked us to commit to, or asked me to commit to. 1, review your police use of force policy, specifically 8 policies relating to the use of force. The second is engage your communities by including a diverse range of input, experiences, and stories in your review. The third is to report the findings of your review to your community and seek feedback. And then 4 is reform your community's police use of force policies. So both the chief and myself have reviewed this, have had some good conversations around it, and believe it's a good pledge to make. So I have already made it and signed it. And I think the good news is that we're starting from a good place. I think there's 2 statistics that I just like to share that I thought were relative as far as the use of force when it comes to our police departments. In the last 4 years, a percentage of the use of force that our officers use when dealing with individuals is 0.0008% of the time. So 0.0008% of the time, our officers use some sort of force, and a gun has been discharged 4 times in the last 50 years by Camas police officers. So I think it gives a good perspective of where we're starting with this, but I do think it is a very good conversation to have. And we'll continue that. And it's been great talking with Mitch around that. And as was said, we're going to be, myself and the chief of police will be this Thursday talking to an equity firm. I think I'm looking forward to just listening. The second thing I had was just a town hall meeting as well. Myself and the council members will be there June 29th. A Zoom call to answer questions and have a discussion. So I'm very much looking forward to that. And then the last thing that I had was just a reminder on the census. I have this little reminder here. It takes just 10 minutes to answer 10 questions that will shape investments in your community for 10 years. So it's not too late if you haven't signed up, but it does, it's a resource for us as far as being counted. And this was an interesting statistic that I saw. For every 100 households missed in the 2020 census count, the state could lose up to $5.8 million. So again, it's important that we get counted. And I think that's all I had. I did skip over Kathy. So we went straight into council comments, but I missed your part. So I'm going to hand it back to Kathy, who's just going to give us a quick update around finances.
Thank you, Mayor.
Sorry, Kathy, by the way, as well.
So I'm going to share my screen. Or am I okay? Okay, thanks. Oops. So it's been, believe it or not, it's been a little over almost 3 years since we've done this. So this is our 21-22 biennial budget kickoff. We are getting ready to plan the next biennium. And I have to say we're doing it in the most interesting of times. And so hopefully this is the only time we have to do something like this. But we're going to still proceed forward with all the things that have been suggested to us over the last year. We heard council, we've heard from the public, and we want to make some changes. So for this preparation for this budget, we're going to spend more time, quality time with council, especially over the summer, before we even get to the mayor's recommended budget, to make sure that we are addressing all the information that we can possibly provide for council for their careful consideration. As part of that, we will have better documentation of every single decision package that will go forward to council, and department heads will spend time with council on these. And I have more on that in just a few minutes, as well as public engagement, and I will come back to that too in detail. Our process that we will have, we'll start with forecasts like we always do. We look at everything in a 6-year horizon. We'll look at, we'll have staff start creating decision packages, work with the mayor on those as well as council. And the new piece is to really go beyond public comment and public testimony during public hearings to address concerns that the residents have as well as the business community. We're making some adjustments because of COVID-19. We got a little late start than we had wanted. We were really hoping to start this in May. That did not happen for obvious reasons, but we're still committed to doing virtual public engagement if we can't have in-person town halls or what we were talking about, roundtables or think tank environments. We're going to do it. We're going to at least do the public engagement piece through a virtual environment. We'll also have Zoom meetings and videos, as well as utilizing new products that we're really excited to use that we think the public will enjoy, as well as council, as well as staff. We're looking at using Balancing Act, and there will be more information coming out on that. We're broadening our use of open budget by addressing the scenarios that we'll be talking about in a minute for that, as well as addressing new decision package formats. This is going to be, I'm not going to sugarcoat this, but this is going to be probably one of the more tougher budget processes we have ever done as a city, short of the Great Recession. We have just, believe it or not, weathered a COVID recession, went into it and came out of it this last May. We have a potential second wave of COVID that could happen. And we also have looming ahead of us the predicted W-shaped recession, where the first recession was the first part of the W, and we potentially will have a second part of the recession happening in probably late summer, early fall. Given the unknowns, we're going to look at 4 different scenarios going forward. We're going to do, working from our right, we could use the 2018 growth rates. If things come out and there isn't a second wave and there's a minimal second part of the W recession, we could see moderate growth. We were starting to see that the very early part of this, the part of the COVID, when COVID was really starting to happen. That was moderate rates around 6 to 7%. To be honest, that one's a little bit difficult to assume would happen, but we'll use it as a bench tool because that is more likely of what we're seeing, what we had originally thought we would see. We're really seeing more things like right now after evaluating April and May, 2016 growth rates. The city is still having some growth, believe it or not, especially within new construction. And if that continues, we would look at using the 2016 growth rates, which are more modest with 4 to 5% growth. If things start changing, we're going to have a status quo budget, which is really just this year's budget, flatlined with just only contractual increases. And then our question mark. The question mark is if things really do change, and they could change very quickly because we get news daily, we might have a cutback budget. So we will have these 4 scenarios going forward until we're more certain as a community which way we should be adopting. We're going to use an interactive process, as I mentioned before, and with our public engagement, we'll be using the Balancing Act tool, and that will be providing more information here probably the next council meeting. Looking at videos that we can help provide context before we go into those exercises. We'll be seriously considering public comment and public hearing testimonies. In the council workshops, we'll have some, like I said, some in the summer, and we'll do some, they will go through a couple of these balancing act scenarios as well. We'll also have department head presentations in depth in the summertime instead of toward the fall, where we had challenges being able to fit all that in as we get pretty compressed toward the end of the budget cycle. And capital discussions as well. The transparency would be some of the things we just talked about, but we'll be also using social media to help drive some of our interest along some of our tools as well. Where are we at in our budgeting preparation, and keep people informed every step of the way. Like I mentioned, these were the 2 public engagement tools that we will be using. And so the timeline, the most important part of this presentation. So we're in budget preparation mode now. In July, we will be doing a capital balancing act with the public as well as with council. And I think we'll even be doing it with some employees too, just to get as much engagement as we can. Staff will still continue to work on their budget preparation, and that will continue almost into the very first part of August. And then we'll start doing in-depth council workshops. Some of those may require a weekend here or there as well, so that we have time to really dive into the department budgets. September, we'll be doing another public engagement outreach specifically around the general fund and using the Balancing Act tool as well as having some information provided through our open budget tool that we have online. And then in October, as prescribed by RCW, we'll have the mayor's recommended budget. We'll have a series of budget presentations, and a council workshop again, probably on a weekend day too, just to go in depth in that as well. November, we start the public hearings as we always do and start adopting pieces of the budget such as property taxes and fee schedule. And then the final budget adoption and public hearing in December. So that's my presentation. It's just to officially kick this off. I'd be happy to answer any questions that I can at this point. And this is, I'm looking forward to meeting with you probably in the next series of meetings going forward until December.
Sounds good.
I have a comment. Kathy, this sounds like a really exciting process, as much as a budget process can be, with the opportunity for our community to engage. And my understanding of this tool, it's something where you can create your own scenario and understand how much it costs, what the trade-offs are, and things like that. Is that how it works?
Yeah, and I'm hoping that that the next meeting we have will just give a little taste of it, what it'll look like. I mean, we won't go through the exercise during a council meeting, but I'd like to walk through what it looks like. So when people when it's available for them later in July to actually go through it, they'll have a chance to do that. We'll also probably have some instructional videos as to how to use the tool. And it's pretty straightforward, but it's always good to know what you're looking at and where to find more information about what you're doing.
Thank you for spearheading this.
I'm really looking forward to this. I think this tool is going to be a game changer as far as engaging with the public and utilizing it. So I'm looking forward to getting that out there.
Yeah, so am I.
Steve?
Kathy, I was having trouble downloading your presentation.
Yes.
And I wonder if any of the rest of the people in the public were. Are you going to repost that so they could actually get access to that timeline
Yes,
and download it themselves?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. One of our citizens called me and let me know that it wasn't working. And so I worked with Bernie, and Bernie did her magic and now it's there. So I apologize. Using that new tool, I thought I had it right. It was working on my end, but obviously wasn't working on the other end.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Kathy? Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
So the next is Jennifer, if you want to go over the City of Camas proclamation of civil emergency COVID-19.
Sure. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before you this evening is the proclamation of civil emergency, and this item has been requested to be on each council agenda moving forward for reaffirmation or changes. There have been no changes since the last council meeting, and so I'd like to open this item up for council discussion and for any motions as well that would come out of that discussion.
Any comments or questions, Shannon?
I don't have a comment or question, but I was going to make a motion.
Oh, sorry.
I have a comment over here, motion too.
All right.
Go ahead, Don.
Would you like me to? Mr. Mayor, whatever sequence you want. I just wasn't ready for a motion because I have a comment.
Boom. You go for it, Don.
Okay. So the last probably 2 or 3 meetings, we've transitioned from phase 1 to phase 2. And in the last couple of meetings, we've talked about the need for just working on essential projects. And we've managed that pretty well. You might remember a couple of meetings ago, one of our citizens in comments brought up the issue of how we were doing with determining that. And so I think a couple of us asked or tasked staff with explaining why it was essential, and we got a good, I think, satisfactory answer. Since we've moved to phase 2 and having this with staff in between meetings, I'm confident that that we should, and I'm recommending that we remove item 6 from the ratified items that were passed on, on the list on April 20th. And item 6 talks about the essential justification for certain projects. I also think that our staff, and with the mayor's oversight, recognize what's essential, and they can self-manage this. So because we're moving into phase, or we have moved into phase 2, I'm going to recommend in a motion, if I have the opportunity to do that, to remove item 6.
So if I understand it correctly, it's put forward the proclamation, removing the item 6, but everything else goes through.
As a part of our process to ratify, yes.
All right. And so Robert said the motion and you seconded it. So
No.
sorry. So then I'm going to start from the beginning before Sean yells at me here. Any motions?
Ask for further discussion, maybe.
Further discussion. So are we, I guess, are we?
Member Anderson has his hand up.
Anderson, sorry, Greg. Everyone's pointing in different directions, but it's different areas on my screen. So Alan's pointing to Sean, Bonnie's pointing to Don, like it's Greg, sorry.
That's okay. I just wait for you to say it's my turn. Just a question to clarify, Councilor Cheney, he's referring to number 6 on the supplemental regarding capital. Is that correct, Mr. Cheney?
That is correct, Mr. Anderson.
Okay, because there's also a number 6 in the base declaration as well. I was just making sure. Thank you.
And that's why I mentioned it, the one that's dated on April 15th and we passed on April 20th, ratified.
Any other comments or questions on that? Steve?
Yeah, that basically covered the comment I was going to make, so I'll just say that's it for me.
All right. Is it safe to ask for a motion now? Yes, all right. Any motions?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I'll make it if Shannon, unless Shannon wants to go ahead with hers. She had first.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you,
right.
Shannon. I move that the mayor's proclamation of civil emergency dated March 18th, 2020, and the supplement dated April 15th, 2020 be reaffirmed, with the exception that section 6 of the supplement dated April 15th and ratified April 20th be stricken.
I'm going to see if I can get this right. It has been moved by Cheney and seconded that the mayor's proclamation of civil emergency dated March 18, 2020, and the supplement dated April 15, 2020 be reaffirmed, with the exception that section 6 of the supplement be stricken.
I'll second that.
All right. Any discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. All right. So next we got Steve. Steve is going to talk about the Northwest 38th Avenue Phase 1 Wetland Mitigation Agreement Amendment.
Great, thank you, Mayor. As part of the requirements for impacting wetlands during the city's 38th Avenue roadway improvement project, we were required to monitor the plantings and other mitigation improvements that we completed with the project for a period of 10 years. We've completed the first 5 years, and so the contract amendment that you have before you tonight is for consultant services, ecological land services, to monitor the wetland mitigation for the next 3-year period, so essentially years 6, 7, and 8. If you were curious, the reason we didn't go through year 10 is working with a consultant, it's hard to go beyond that 3-year period and anticipate what the increase in expenses might be, even if it's just inflation. So we stuck with years 6, 7, and 8. The amount of the amendment is $32,700, and that includes a $7,000 contingency fund. And that's in the event that we need to plant additional mitigation plantings or have other needs when the biologists are out there inspecting the site. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Steve? Any motions?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move that the Northwest 38th Avenue Phase 1 Wetland Mitigation and Monitoring Professional Services Agreement Amendment 1 in the amount of $32,700 be approved.
Second.
All right. It has been moved by Carter and seconded to approve the Northwest 38th Avenue Phase 1 Wetland Mitigation and Monitoring Professional Service Agreement Amendment 1 in the amount of $32,700. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion passes. Next, Steve, again on the Northeast 3rd Avenue Bridge Seismic Retrofit Professional Service Agreement Amendment 3.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And I'll apologize for the long names on these titles. Get hard to say. The city is currently advertising for bids for construction of the 3rd Avenue Bridge seismic upgrades. I think we should be bringing the award back to council here at the next meeting in July. This item is for professional services. It's HHPR is the consultant on the project, and we have asked for them to provide construction management services on the project. The contract amendment is for $399,937. And I think the big thing on this project is a reminder of the grant that we had received through WashDOT. And through that grant, they're actually paying for 100% of the construction costs of the project. So that's a great thing on this one. And that includes this amendment for construction management. So even though it's a $400,000 contract, it is included in the grant funds that we're receiving from WashDOT. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Steve? Ellen.
Okay, just a quick one, Steve. How often does it happen that we get 100% of our projects paid for through these types of grants?
Not very, actually. In fact, we were talking with staff the other day, and this is probably one of the better grant projects, I guess, that we've received, if you want to call it that. Through the entire length of the project, we'll essentially have about a $3 million project, and the city's share of that will be about $100,000 total. Wow. So it's a great project for us. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Any motions? Shannon.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the contract supplement 3 agreement with HHPR for construction management and administration in the amount of $399,937 be approved.
Second.
All right, it has been moved by Roberts and seconded to approve the contract supplement 3 agreement with HHPR for construction management and administration in the amount of $399,937. Any discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion passes. Next, we got Steve again on resolution number 20-006, revising comprehensive street program, additional 6 years. So Steve, you want to take it from here?
Yeah, we spent quite a bit of time on this at the last meeting on June 1st. At that meeting, staff provided a draft plan, and council received comments from the public, and staff took those comments back. We made some revisions based on what we heard. So 3 or 4 things that we did that I can mention right off, and then we can get into some additional detail. But we did add the bridge to the SR 500 core project and increase the cost of that project to account for the bridge. We added a Brady Road and Grand Ridge Drive intersection safety improvement project, and we inserted that as a priority 6 project on the list. And then we also there was a couple of corrections that I think Curly noted during the presentation at the public hearing regarding the cost for, I believe it was Crown Road and the SR 14 Slough Bridge project. So those corrections were also made. In addition to the changes, we had actually received some handwritten comments from Adam Kluka at 7021 Northwest Freeburg Strunk. And Adam actually got on tonight on public comments as well and made similar comments, but he had actually submitted those comments again prior to the public hearing. Staff did not see those comments. They were submitted directly to City Hall, and with everybody working from home, the comments weren't received prior to the public hearing. So we wanted to make sure and bring those to your attention and talk about those tonight. And then I think we'd also received another note from Mr. Kluka on June 10th. And all of those had similar comments, and they were very similar to what you heard Adam talk about tonight, which was Northwest Payne Street and Northwest Dwyer Creek Road, if you will, or Street B, I think is often what has been referred to in the past. They're currently shown as priorities 27 and 28 on the map and in the tables. And Mr. Kluka's comments generally were that those projects should be moved up in the priority listing, given the amount of development in the area that has been seen and what's anticipated. And I think in his written comments, he had stated at one point that, you know, he would like to see them potentially moved up ahead of the North Shore area, even just because of the amount of development that's occurring in the area around Lake Road and Freeburg Strunk and Camas Meadows Drive. From a staff perspective, if you took a look at the staff report, we mentioned that, you know, the roads are definitely on the list, like I mentioned, and, you know, priorities 27 and 28, which is good. That means that if we decide to go after funding, we can definitely say that those projects are on the list and that, you know, they are a priority to the city to get completed. But with that, we have not made any changes to the priorities right now based on the comments we'd received. But we thought it was appropriate, obviously, to bring those forward to council, let you hear and see those comments from Mr. Kluka, and then have a chance to consider them before you adopt the resolution. The other one that I think I can talk about is the comment today from Masa Eschke that you guys, the council received via email. And again, that one was in regards to Brady Road. I think Masa wanted to take the comments a little bit further maybe than the council, this is my interpretation, a little bit further maybe than the discussion that we had at the last meeting. Beyond just the safety improvements at the intersection of Grand Ridge and Brady, and really apply them to potentially the entire corridor of Brady Road from the city limits there with Vancouver and then up the hill, past, I'm drawing a blank. McIntosh, thank you very much. Up past McIntosh where there's a more complete section. So that was my interpretation. I would note that there is a Brady Road project on the list already that talks about pedestrian and bicycle improvements. Again, my sense is that potentially Masa feels that we need to, think about taking that to the next level on that entire stretch, and maybe trying to figure out how to widen and improve that section to a more standard cross section, if you will. So the only other comment I would make based on what I had heard from Mr. Kluka's comments earlier tonight is regarding funding. I guess it's just a reminder that projects on this list aren't necessarily funded. In fact, oftentimes it's just the opposite. If we do have money for a project and they are fully funded, we actually pull them from this list and we no longer use them from a planning standpoint. It means they're funded and we pull them off. So that's a point of confusion a lot of times on this list, is that people see it and they think that the city has set aside money for a particular project or projects, and unfortunately that's actually not the case. This is just a planning document. So with that, I am going to stop and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Don. You're on mute there, Don.
I have a question and a suggestion, and Steve, you touched on the topic of funding in hand. I just want to clarify, it was stated by Mr. Klukla that we had money in hand, or at least that's what I understood his statement to me. And I just verify, did we ever have any partial or full funding for those projects? Either one?
Not that I'm aware of. Obviously, development as it has occurred out there has made improvements to portions of those roads, and I think that was part of Mr. Kluka's comments as well, where you know, parts of Payne at least were only 20 feet wide, and that's the reason is that development has only occurred on a portion of it. In the city, to my knowledge, at least, we've never had funding for either one of those projects in hand, at least.
Okay, thank you. And my comment is giving deference to Mr. Kukla, and quite honestly, the energy and effort that he's put into maintaining that. I understand that money may be difficult, but I still, in deference to his comments and his concern for safety, I'd like to encourage council, and I'm prepared to do a motion on this particular part of it, to move the priority up from 27 and 28 to 16 and 17. But I'm interested to hear council's reaction to that as well.
Mr. Mayor,
So,
Mr. Mayor, if I could chime in for a second here.
Yes.
Procedurally, it was my recollection that we closed the public hearing on this matter. And Steve, please remind me about that. And now we're considering, what I'm hearing is that we're considering matters that were brought up during public comment and matters that were submitted after the public hearing was closed. But I'm willing to be corrected on that and get some clarification, because the scope should be limited to what was considered within the public hearing process, which again, my recollection, the public hearing was closed.
So for clarity, if I can, the first set of comments submitted by Mr. Kluka were submitted prior to the public hearing. And they do reference both projects 27 and 28 with the two roads that we mentioned. So.
Okay, thank you. I think it was worth clarifying for the record, at least, to be sure that we're on the same page here. Thanks, Steve.
Yep.
Any of the council members want to opinions on what Don was saying as far as changing the order?
It's on it.
Steve?
I'm good with Don's comments. I think I just heard Shannon. So I'm done with mine.
So would we make that, and for clarification then, do we make that an amendment in the resolution with those changes in there, Don, when you say it? Or Sean?
well, I'm prepared to make the motion when I move to have it adopted. Maybe Sean could tell us, but I assume that we could make that amendment in the motion, but maybe there's another way as well.
No, that's what I would recommend. That again, the resolution is a standalone resolution, and you're talking about the attachment, and in reference to the attachment, the exhibit, to the extent that it's council prerogative through the motion, then you can request that that particular portion be amended and built into the motion itself.
Thank you, Councilor. I'm prepared to do a motion if council is finished commenting.
Any other questions or comments from the council? So motions then, Don?
I think I'll do this right. I move that resolution number 20-006 be read by title only.
Second.
All right, it has been moved by Cheney and seconded to read resolution number 20-006 by title only. All in favor? Any discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion passes.
Resolution number 20-006, a resolution revising and extending the comprehensive street program for an additional 6 years.
Any further discussion or motions? Roberts?
I move that resolution number 20-006 be adopted.
Second.
It has been moved by Roberts and seconded that resolution number 20-006 be adopted.
Again, if I could jump in again, was there going to be a part of the motion should include that amendment at this point? If there was going to be an amendment, this would be the time to do it.
So should we go back to that last one then with that amendment? Is that what you're saying, Sean?
That'd be the protocol would be to the extent that there's an amendment, the amendment would occur within this motion.
So Cheney, do you want to do that second motion with that amendment in there?
Maybe Counselor Roberts would like to amend the motion that is on the table.
That is even just as good, Bonnie.
Well, I hope I get this worded correctly. I move that resolution number 20-006, that the amendment that Councilmember Cheney spoke of be added and this be adopted.
Second.
All right, it has been moved by Roberts and seconded that the resolution number 20-006 be adopted with the changes Councilmember Cheney added. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. We got Steve up again on the backyard habitat certification program. You want to take us through that, Steve?
Yeah, last one here tonight, Mayor. This is a renewal of a program actually that we started in 2019. It's a partnership with the Portland Audubon and Columbia Land Trust. And it's a program where they provide technical assistance and recognition to homeowners that are interested in creating essentially kind of natural, low maintenance, environmentally friendly backyards or garden areas that help the environment, obviously, but in our case, there's also a benefit from a stormwater perspective, as this type of program helps us meet our NPDES stormwater permit that we have through Department of Ecology. So there's benefit to the homeowner and certainly a benefit to the city and the environment as well. Popular program right now with people on the waiting list still. So it was successful in the first year. And the city's contribution is actually a monetary amount of about $5,500. And here we're proposing on paying that $5,500 out of a stormwater capacity grant that we got from the state 2019 through 2021 biennium. So that's a $50,000 grant that can be used towards any of our permit requirements. And since this goes towards that, that's what our proposal is from a staff perspective. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Steve? Steve Hogan?
Yeah, Steve Wall, you said there's a waiting list for people, but can you explain to the people listening how they would get onto this list and who they would contact to become a part of this program?
Yeah, I think there's multiple ways you can do it, and I believe we have a spot on our website, and if it's not there anymore, we'll certainly get it on. But the county is also another place, and then you can actually just look for the Backyard Habitat Certification Program, and the information will come up through multiple ways, through Portland Audubon, through the Columbia Land Trust, through the Watershed Alliance, Clark County. And so there's a number of places on the web essentially where you can get the information the easiest.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Steve? Any motions?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move that the memorandum of understanding with the Columbia Land Trust for the Backyard Habitat Certification Program be approved.
Second.
Second.
It has been moved by Carter and seconded to approve the memorandum of understanding with the Columbia Land Trust for the Backyard Habitat Certification Program. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. And with that, we are back to public comments. So please state your name and address for the record. You have up to 3 minutes to share your comments, and I'll hand it back over to you, Bernie.
All right, Mayor, thank you. So just as a reminder, if you're joining us by phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand for public comment. Otherwise, just click on the raise hand icon. And so we have Randall, go ahead.
Mayor McDonald, Randall Friedman, 1187 Northwest 10th Avenue. I haven't talked about the rest of downtown and how it needs a plan. I realized yesterday sitting for breakfast at Natalia's why that is so. The view is so nice, Lutz's, Feast, the other charming buildings, but what can become of them? The downtown commercial zone has no height limits or setback requirements. The apartments on 6th show what downtown commercial can do. Imagine sitting at Natalia's with only with apartments above the storefronts rising 3 to 4 floors above the street. Imagine boxes lining the blocks of downtown core. Imagine streets jammed with people trying to park. Some might say there are downtown design guidelines. Yes, there are. So if the Lutzes sell, the buyer knows what kind of awning, street trees, windows are required. But those guidelines say nothing of height or use. The Clara apartments show what the city has allowed, all without parking. And if that is now the precedent, then consider what our charming downtown could look like. I firmly believe we need more people living downtown. Imagine 1,000 more people the last few months buying the takeout food from our restaurants and keeping our businesses going. However, we all want to understand the look and feel of this future development before downtown's charm is lost. It sounds like we need a plan. It sounds like this plan is perhaps more pressing than the North Shore. Please place the resolution I submitted on the agenda for a public vote. We deserve to know how each of you feel about our downtown versus a design studio for North Shore owners. It's not words that matter, it's actions. I have to close and react to the needed discussion of social justice and equity. Frankly, if you truly believe Camas needs to be more inclusive of social equity issues, spending $500,000 of public money to plan what will likely be a wealthy enclave on the North Shore is going against the tide. If you believe in social equity, take a look at where Camas can do something about it, and that is downtown. This is the conversation we need. Thank you.
Thank you, Randall.
Okay. Emma, go ahead.
Hi, Emma Cox, 639 Northwest Fremont Street. My comment goes out to Council Member Shannon Roberts. Your council comments on the Black Lives Matter protests in Camas need to be addressed. I participated in one of the protests, which was organized by 3 CHS students. While on the corner of 3rd and Dallas, I recognized so many Camas students, CHS alumni like myself, and their parents. Your comments that you saw many out-of-state cars in the parking lot of Safeway, and then questioned how many actual Camas citizens were there, invalidates the support of the Black Lives Matter movement in Camas. As an elected official, your comments are unacceptable. I urge you, Councilor Roberts, council members, and mayor to educate yourselves more on the systemic racism that is heavily woven into our community. Reading books and watching documentaries from Black creatives and academics is vital towards better understanding our city, county, state, and country. We cannot rely on our friends of color to educate us. I know I personally have work to do in order to be a better ally, and I'm currently reading an academic paper from MIT on environmental racism in Portland, Oregon. But Councilor Roberts, know that the support for Black lives in Camas is strong. And while our growing suburb may not look like Minneapolis, that doesn't mean that institutional racism, which permeates our entire country, can be dismissed. The young people of Camas are here, shouting that enough is enough. It's time for progressive change.
Thank you, Emma, for those comments.
Okay, Phil, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Again, I want to just give my support to my neighbor Randall. That's continuing to make a very passionate point that falls on deaf ears. I think it's a really poignant thing to mention there about the North Shore being an enclave for the wealthy, most likely. None of the discussion has been about how this is going to bring more housing beyond large lots. So, and then to the statements just made kind of inspired me to jump back in. Councilmember Roberts, I agree with what Emma Cox said. You offered no support to your claim. You didn't offer a photo. You didn't say anything else beyond what you saw. So you were there. You obviously could have done something. Also, you're in a position of access. So why don't you, along with your comment there, why don't you share some demographic info about the city of Camas and the amount of people that have registered out-of-state vehicles that are supplied by their workplace that's over the bridge potentially? You did none of that. You're in a position to do so, and you just kind of threw some conjecture out there, and you lived up that. So not acceptable from a person in your position. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Phil.
Okay, Masha, go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Mahsa Ishki, 729 Northwest Grand Ridge Drive. Thank you, everyone, for your time, and thanks, Steve, for translating my request earlier today. I sent an email and also a report about Brady Road. What I meant with what I said with the full street improvements, I'm hoping that to not just see asphalt sidewalk path connect McIntosh all the way to 192nd, our city limit at close to 192nd. So what I was seeing as a vision for Brady Road is matching with the upper side of the Brady Road with street lights, planter strip, sidewalks, hopefully on both sides, if not on one side, continuous from all the way from north of McIntosh to the city limit at the City of Vancouver limit. That's my request, if we can have that in the transportation, 6-year transportation plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Massa.
Okay, and there currently are no other hands raised, and I'm just checking. We have 3 public comments that have come in via email. We have one from Randall Friedman that was received at 7:57, and the subject is public comment. We have one that came in at 8:18 from Douglas Strybel. Subject line is City Council comments. And then another one from Randall that we received at 8:20, with the subject line being second public comment. And those will be routed to council. If you have a public comment that you want to send via email, you can send it to publiccomments@cityofcamas.us. We do have one more hand that just went up, and that is Adam. Go ahead, Adam.
Yes. Yes, I just wanted to comment that Northwire Creek was annexed back 20 years ago, and they have all the plans of what the streets and everything that was going to go in there. And in 20 years, we now rezoned a lot of that property, and that 20-year plan should be updated with the current companies that are on there and the new zoning that's in there. We need a new map with the Northwire Creek, with the 500-600 apartments that are planned in there, and the retail, 22 acres of retail that's planned on Lake Road and Main Street. All of that apartments and homes are necessary for our tax base for revenue for Camas. So that should be brought up to date. The North Dwyer Creek plan was put together in 2000, and now we're in 2020. So that project needs to be updated to current with all the stuff that's coming in there. And once that starts, the rest of it will be put in there. This side of the lake is the south side of the lake rather than the north side. It'll be 40 years before the north side goes in compared to the 20 years it's taken for North Dwyer Creek to go in. And we're not progressing on it. We're with the streets, it'll grow. Thank you, Don.
Okay. Good.
Thank you, Adam.
Right.
And those are all of the public comments.
Thank you, Bernie. And with that, we will call this meeting to an end. Thank you very much, everyone.